Hello and welcome back to Flight Sim Tutorials. I hope you guys have enjoyed the first 3 lessons and are learning quite well how to fly, and I'm sure you guys have already tried flying in other ways and trying other things that I haven't already shown you, but that's completely okay. That's exactly what a simulator is about. In this episode or this lesson, we're going to actually be learning how to turn an aircraft correctly, and there's a lot more involved in turning an aircraft than one might think. It's not just about, oh, I'm going to turn an aircraft, let's turn that way and that way, and that's going to turn our aircraft left and right respectively. Yes, that's part of it, but there's also a lot more involved. For example, we need to coordinate with the rudders, we need to correctly turn, we don't need to pull too far, and we need to, very, very importantly, we do need to do this. We need to work with the elevators as well. And of course the power. We're not going to be looking too much at the power in this particular episode. What we are going to be doing, I'm going to sort of try and keep my nose or my view like that so that you can see the turn of the aircraft like so. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I want you to watch the second one. If you need to follow along, I want you to watch that second yoke, the one on the right. The reason being is that I want you to be able to see these instruments here as we go through. And actually, you know what? No, I'm going to leave that on because that's how you're going to be flying, and that's going to be better. Now, if you haven't watched the first lesson, to quickly recap over what we went through in the first lesson, I'm not going to go over it, so you need to watch that, but I'm going to quickly go over what we just had a look at in lesson 1. Lesson 1 was talking about, we looked at the airspeed indicator, what all of these mean. We looked at the attitude indicator and what all these markings mean, the altimeter, how it works, the vertical speed indicator, the horizontal situation indicator, and the turn coordinator, and I explained this. In this episode, we're going to be looking at these 3 more so than 1, 2, 3, but these 3 are also going to be coming in very, very handy. In fact, of all of these, the one that's going to be the least useful, or the one you're going to spend the least time looking at, is actually going to be this one over here. And if things actually go right and things are going well, you will hardly be looking at this over here, and you may not even be looking at this over there, more relying on this here and this one over here. So that's what we're going to do. Second lesson, we're looking at signage around an airport. So I taught you about what all these signs mean that you can see and you can't see over here, all the runway markings, the taxiway markings, so on and so forth. That lesson is not going to be used at all today. And then lesson 3 was about takeoff, steady climbs and trims for level flight, so that one is going to be used. I am at EGNX, that's Echo Golf November X-ray, and what we're going to be doing over here, if you're following along, I want you to go to this and I want you to go to runway 09, and that's where we're going to be starting. If you're not following along in the sense of doing this whilst I'm doing it, then by all means just watch and learn. That would be exactly what you want to do. But when you do get to practicing, do try and practice at this airport because it might be familiar to you before moving on to maybe your local airport. Transponder needs to be set to altitude and 7,000 as I explained in the last episode, but of course you don't have to do that just yet, so don't worry if you're not going to do that at the moment. It's just good habit to do it in a simulator, preparing for things. For example, if you want to fly on VATSIM or Pilot Edge or something like that, you'll need to know more about this. Of course, we'll cover that as and when the time comes. I did cover it a little bit in the last lesson, but we're not going to be looking at that as of yet. What do we need to do? In this, we're going to, first of all, we're going to climb, we're going to take off and climb up to 2,000 feet. We're then going to level off at 2,000 feet, and then I'm going to teach you guys all about turning an aircraft and how to correctly turn an aircraft, and more importantly, how to come out of a turn correctly whilst keeping the same speed, the same altitude, and not letting the aircraft spin out of control. So, everyone ready to go? Okay, 1 stage of flaps down for me. I think that was, hang on a second. Yeah, that's 1 stage of flaps down for me. Just need to check. Look out the window. There we go. They are there. That's good. We're going to, again, I have a landing gear that is retractable, so I am going to be calling positive rate gear up once I'm in the air. Obviously you guys don't need to have gear up, and I am rotating, or I'm going to start rotating at around 73 knots, and we're going for a 90 knot climb at 500 foot per minute until we get to 2,000 feet, at which we should be able to trim quite nicely in this aircraft for 100 knots and with level flight at 2,000 feet. You should be able to do the same in your Cessna or any other Piper Arrow or Piper Cherokee that you're flying. So, everyone ready to go? I think I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Don't forget the rudder as you add the power in, because this aircraft does have that pull to the left. 70, rotate. We're up to 80 actually at this point, but okay, there we go. Very nice. 500 foot per minute is what we're after, and we're going to reduce the power. And there we go. Positive rate gear up. And I'm actually going to bring my flaps in at the same time as well. I'm now going to trim for 90 knots and a 90 knot climb. A little bit fast at the moment, but again, that's okay. Like I said, it's a little bit of practice. We're going to get used to it. And there we go. The trim looks to be all but set. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain runway heading. So I'm flying runway heading, which means I'm going to maintain 09. That's the M1 underneath us. So I'm going to make sure that I am actively moving this aircraft to maintain 0 or 90 degrees as best as I can. I might require a little bit of rudder actually. I want to increase my rate of climb a little bit. Give it a little bit more power as well. And there we go. I'm happy with that. That's trimmed. I haven't got my hands. I'm not pulling back on the yoke or anything. And that's exactly how we need to do it. We need to make sure that the aircraft is stable in climb or stable in flight. It just makes everything a lot easier. So, whilst we're climbing, I'm going to talk a little bit about turning an aircraft. So why is turning an aircraft important? Well, you can't go from anywhere from A to B without turning an aircraft unless you want to go in a completely straight line. So you're not going to be able to get from Los Angeles to San Francisco without turning an aircraft, because none of the runways head in that direction. Same way, you're not going to be able to get from Chicago to pretty much anywhere. Because of the same reason. You're not going to be able to get from Heathrow to Edinburgh without that. You're not going to be able to get from any airport A to B without being able to turn an aircraft. It's very important. Also, if you're going sightseeing, I'm pretty sure you don't want to just be flying in this direction. And how are you going to land? If you want to come back to the same airport, what if you've parked your car here and you've hired a plane for the day? Then how are you going to get back? You need to know how to turn an aircraft. It's very important. So, the basics of turning an aircraft as we come up to the height that I'm going to level off at. We are generating lift on the wing. The lift on the wing is generated in a perpendicular angle to the wing itself. So the wing is flat whilst we're climbing or whilst we're in level flight. The wing is flat, the lift is upwards. That lift is what keeps us in the air. Don't forget to level off when we get to 2,000 feet. To begin the level off sequence. So that's what keeps us in the air. That's absolutely fine, not a problem, we can understand that. But the issue here is that when you turn an aircraft, the wing changes angle in terms of it's no longer straight up in the air. So the angle of lift is no longer straight anymore. It now has some sort of angle. So it's for example, if we look at, if we look at the turn coordinates, if we just level ourselves out here, which I'm going to do now. There we go. Let me just level ourselves out. Make sure you guys are leveling out as well if you're following along. Should be leveling out at pretty much the same height, 2,000 feet. There we go. It's leveling up quite nicely. Alright, and I'm going to make sure I'm turning back towards 090. I've actually swayed a good 10 degrees. That's poor from me. There we go. Get ourselves back in. I'm actually going to reduce the power ever so slightly. There we go. I think that power trim setting wasn't perfect for me. So, look at this turn coordinator. I want you to have a good look at this turn coordinator here. The turn coordinator is flat, so the lift is going upwards. Now imagine if the turn coordinator was that way. In fact, it's sort of moving right now of its own accord. If the turn coordinator was that way, the lift would then be that way, correct? Off the wing. So instead of going up, you're going sideways now, which means that you've lost some of that vertical component, because now you can split it into X and Y, or Z and Y, however you want to, Z and X, however you want to say it. You can split it into those two components. At the moment, if it's completely straight up, the X component, or the Y component, which is basically your turning force, is 0. When you turn the aircraft and you drop, so you turn the wings, that lift is now producing a turn in one or the other direction, meaning that your aircraft is being pulled into a turn. That's how your aircraft turns. But at the same time, you've reduced the lift component on your aircraft. So that means you need to add elevator into your turn to maintain the height, or you need to add power into your turn. So you can either add elevator in, or you can add power in. One or the other. So that's a little bit to remember about turns. The other thing is, I mentioned in the first episode, or the first lesson, about turning an aircraft and spinning an aircraft out of control. So if we look at this turn coordinator over here, as we drift off again to the right. Why am I drifting off to the right today? It's not helpful at all. Should be drifting to the left. It should be drifting away to the left. Now I'm just drifting too much to the left. This is poor. Come on. Maintain. I should have checked my weather before I went in. Hopefully you guys have picked a clearer day than I have. We're going to sort this out anyway. We are trimmed very nicely though at 2,000 feet, so I'm not actually doing anything there. Now if we look at the turn coordinator, we have that little spirit level at the bottom. Remember that? I spoke about that in the first lesson. I spoke about this little spirit level. That tells us how much the aircraft is slipping. That's a slip indicator of the aircraft, and with the rudder we can control that slip. So to give a crude example, it is how it works, but it's maybe not the easiest of way, not the cleverest of ways to explain. When you have if you've watched The Fast and the Furious or something like that, or you've watched racing and you see a car spin out of control, what's happened is the driver of the car has turned the wheel. In our sense, we're turning the yoke. So we're turning the yoke and we're turning one part of the plane, let's say the front. Now in a car, it's limited by the grip and the aerodynamics of the car if it's a race car, but mostly it's limited by the grip on the rear wheel. In a plane, it's limited by the aerodynamics of the aircraft on the rear, but it works in essentially the same way. So what's going to happen is you've turned the wheel really sharp. So in this case, you've turned the yoke really sharp. The aircraft has now pitched the nose or the front of the aircraft in a specific direction. What that's done is that's induced a spin on the back of the aircraft, so the back of the aircraft suddenly wants to turn around. Maybe if it's a car, it doesn't have enough grip. If it's an aircraft like this, the aerodynamics are pushing the tail around. and the aircraft wants to spin, i.e. it wants to point your nose tighter and tighter into the turn until you're going sideways. You've got a slip angle going on. When your aircraft does that, you're in an incorrectly banked turn and you can lose control of your aircraft. We want to naturally avoid that. So to do that, we use the rudder. Now, similarly, the rudder can do the same if you don't use the ailerons. The ailerons are what turns the aircraft on the wings. So watch what happens now. I'm going to give it a little bit of rudder kick to the left and to the right. So I'm going to start with some rudder to the left. Just a little bit, not too much. So I'm turning the rudder, and if I look down, you can see the rudder turn in a few seconds. There we go. Now, look what's happening. It's trying to spin the aeroplane so that it's pitched down and it's trying to spin. I've straightened the aircraft out. I'm now going to rudder to the right, so exactly the opposite way, and the same thing's going to happen. The back of the aircraft is trying to spin the front of the aircraft out. The exact same thing, and we're back on 090. Now, if I was to do that very severely, that was very gentle. If I was to do that severely, the aircraft would literally be induced, or I would be inducing a spin on the aircraft. And as you can see here, no acrobatic maneuvers, including spins, approved. So I can't spin this aircraft, I'm not allowed. Of course I'm going to spin it at some point. I have to show you guys. But what we can do is we can turn this aircraft. So I'm going to show you how to turn an aircraft. We're all going to turn to a heading of 360. That's 0 on the compass card, 360 degrees. We're going to turn left, because left turning in an aircraft like this is easier than right. And I'm going to explain why as we do our first turn. And we're going to keep our height and our speed the same as best as we can. So we have to monitor our vertical speed to keep it 0. We're going to monitor our compass card to take it to where we need to go, and we're going to monitor our turn coordinator to make sure we're lined up, as in we're coordinated, and we're going to monitor this. Now, this attitude indicator, we're going to be using it. I said we've got 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 30, 60 and 90 degree turns. What are we going to do? For this first one, we're going to take a 15 to 20 degree turn, which means that we need to roll out of the turn at half the angle that we're banking at. That's the general rule. You roll out of the turn at half the angle. So if we do a 10 degree turn, when we get 5 degrees before we need to make before our heading, we need to roll out to avoid overshooting the turn. If we're at 20 degrees, we need to do it 10 degrees before. 30 degrees is 15, 45 degrees, so on and so forth. So 22 and a half and 30 degrees. So here we go. So we're going to turn to the left now. So gently, I turn the yoke. And as I turn, we're going, there we go, there's the 15. And I've got the elevator slightly up now. You saw it drop, you saw the vertical speed go down, so I've compensated for that. And we're at 20 degrees, and we're going to maintain this slight amount of rudder to keep that ball in the middle. We're maintaining 15 to 20 degrees, and as we get close to this, so we're going to get to about 10 degrees and we're going to roll out. So we're 10 degrees before the 0 and we roll out, nice and simple. And see how smoothly that rolled out onto 0. So we're going to do that again. Now the rollout is basically we turn the ailerons in the opposite way. So we turn the yoke in the opposite way, very, very gently. Nothing too major, nothing sharp, everything has to be done smooth. And more importantly, the aircraft has to be stable both on entry and on exit. So you can see the aircraft is completely stable again where we are. So we're going to do it again. This time we're turning to 270, left turn. So again, we gently turn the yoke. Doesn't take too much. Pull back on the elevator a little bit to bring our nose up. And a little bit of rudder. We're in a 20 degree bank now. And we're losing some height here on the verticals, speed, so you pull back on the yoke a little bit more. And as you can see, I have overshot. Now, did I do that on purpose or did I do it on accident? Honestly, I did it on accident. I'm going to pretend I did that on purpose. By focusing too much on the vertical speed, when I started losing vertical speed, I was focused so much on keeping the vertical speed indicator back to 0, I lost sight of the horizontal situation indicator until it was almost too late. Now thankfully I noticed that in time, because in my peripheral vision I noticed the 2.7 coming up a lot faster than I thought it would, and I managed to recover. So we're going to do that one more time. We're going to go to 180 now. So here we go, the aircraft is stable. Turn to 180, pull up on the elevator, 20-degree bank. There we go. This is a very nice turn. See, this is much nicer. And now I can focus on what I'm having to look at. So my turn coordinator and my horizontal situation indicator, because I'm not climbing, I'm not dropping. I'm keeping a nice smooth turn. And roll out. Very gently. And there we have it. I'm now on 180. Easy as pie. That's the left-hand turn. Now the right-hand turn, because the left hand, we spoke about the rotation of the propeller always pulling us to the left. That's why on the runway we have to rudder right. Well, this happens in the air as well. And when we're turning, the propeller does affect how the turn goes. So when you're actually turning to the left, you need less rudder than when you turn to the right. So now we're going to do a turn to the right. So from 180, we're going to turn to 270 again. And this time we're going to turn right. Now watch, I will have to put more rudder in, because you're going to notice that ball start to move a lot faster. So here we go. Turning to the right. And you can see that ball is now starting to move, even though I haven't even reached 20 degrees of bank yet. So now I have to put in some rudder to keep this correctly banked. There we go. And 10 degrees, roll out. Nice and gentle. Perfect. And we're still holding around 2,000 feet. We're not having any difficulty with that. Every turn I'm making is getting a little bit better now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to continue along. We're headed back towards East Midlands Airport. The airport is just there. Oops. I actually have just hit my trim control by mistake. So I now need to retrim. Well, that's poor. We're going to head back to East Midlands Airport, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue by doing a few turns. So now I'm going to turn to the right to 0 or 360. So I'm going to do a right turn to 360, but I am going to do a sharper turn. I'm now going to do a 30-degree turn. As a matter of fact, let's do a full 360-degree turn. So we're going to get to 270, but we're going to do a full 360 at 30 degrees. Now this turn is a sort of turn air traffic control generally likes. They like a 30-degree turn. It's nice, it's sharp, it's not too severe. To give you a severity, a shallow turn is 20 degrees or less, a medium turn is 20 to 45 degrees, and a steep turn is 45 degrees onwards. So we're going to do a 30-degree turn in this aircraft now. Watch what happens when I do this 30-degree turn. I'm going to start the turn. I'm going to start lifting on the nose, so lifting the elevator to keep going. I am now at pulling back. That's at 30 degrees. Now you notice I'm having difficulty keeping the vertical speed going. There we go. That's alright, not too bad. But it's happening, it's moving, the aircraft is going, but it is a little difficult, or it's harder to keep my vertical speed because of the angle that I am at. And you can see we have therefore increased in speed a little bit and dropped almost 200 feet in height. So that's no good. So this is something that requires practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring myself back into 270. Now watch the aircraft retrim. Remember I talked about aircraft trimming? This aircraft is basically going to retrim itself right now to where it needs to be. I haven't done anything, or should I say it's not going to retrim itself, it's going to work itself out and go, well, hang on a minute, I need to increase my height. So you saw when I went into that 30-degree turn, I couldn't maintain the lift on this aircraft in particular. Now different aircraft will be able to maintain lift differently. So for this, the best way for me to go about it is to do a 30-degree turn and actually put some power in. So we're going to add some power into the turn. So it's going to be a power on turn. So let's go to 270 again. We'll get ourselves stabilized again wherever we're at. So for this we're stabilizing at 1,900 for this. And we're going to try now to add power into this turn. Actually, we're not stable at 1,900 yet. Let's stabilize ourselves. Let's wait for ourselves to stabilize. So we'll hold 270. It's very important when you're learning how to fly to make sure that your aircraft is stable before every maneuver, because if it isn't stable, then the maneuver is going to start wrong, and therefore you're not going to be learning in the correct way. So make sure your aircraft is trimmed at a stable speed before you start any maneuver. So there we go. Now we're trimmed and at a stable speed. Right. So I'm going to turn now. I'm going to see if I can add power, and let's see what happens now. So turn. Add power. Now you notice now I'm increasing speed. But it's a lot easier for me to now maintain my vertical speed at the 30-degree. It's very, very easy. So that's another way that is turning out to be incredibly easy now, as the power is on, to maintain a 30-degree. And you can see now I'm climbing. So that's because I let it go before I let it drop below 30 degrees. My bank angle dropped below 30 degrees, and therefore I lost that nice smooth turn. So it's all about practice here. Even I need to practice more. But there we go. And now I've dropped the power again, and look, we're back where we need to go. And I'm going to roll out about now. Start the rollout, nice and smooth, and we're still headed back for East Midlands Airport. Nice and smooth and trimmed. So bringing that trim, correcting that trim up. There we go. So that's good. So at least we're learning how to do sharper turns. So a 30-degree turn can be done. 30 degrees is a very nice turn to do, and it's very, very satisfying when you manage to pull a 30-degree turn off. So what have we learnt in this lesson? Well, in this lesson we've learnt that all these instruments, one, are very important. We've learnt how to turn an aircraft using both power and no power. We've learnt how to manipulate both the yoke, the rudders, and the ailerons, so that's controlled with the yoke, the elevator, again controlled with the yoke, and the rudder, controlled with the rudder pedals, to give ourselves a better understanding of turning an aircraft and how to turn an aircraft in a coordinated fashion to avoid spinning the aircraft out. So we've learnt how to do that. We've learned how to maintain level, or as close to level as we can, level flight whilst turning an aircraft. So I'm actually turning an aircraft now, and you can see I'm maintaining fairly level flight here as I turn. So you guys should now understand how to also roll out of a turn. So you use the the half angle. So if you're turning with a 10-degree bank, you roll out 5 degrees. If you're turning with a 20-degree bank, you roll out 10 degrees before. If you're turning with a 30-degree bank, you roll out 15 degrees before. So hopefully you guys have learned how to do that. I'm actually lining up for the runway. I'm going to land this aircraft because in the next episode I'm going to show you how to land an aircraft. So I might as well give you a little bit of a preview now on that. So hopefully you guys have learnt in general how to turn aircraft, and again, this is something that requires a lot of practice. You need to keep practicing upon this. It's practice will make perfect. Your first turn may have been really poor. You may have pulled back on the stick, done that. That's a little bit, that's okay. It happens. Stuff like that happens. You may have done a little bit too much rudder. You might have had the plane go like this or like this. That's okay as well. Again, all these things happen. It's all about practice. It's all about getting used to this and getting used to flying an aircraft. So I'm going to bring this aircraft in for landing now. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you do like this video, or thumbs up if you're watching this on Twitch. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on these advanced flight sim tutorials. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you want to see. Of course, the next episode, like I said, we're going to be learning about landing. So we're not only going to take off, we're going to be putting it all together, and we're going to be landing the aircraft. You can have you're watching a teaser of it right now as I start bringing this aircraft into land. What else needs to be covered in the next episode? We'll do a bit of circuits. So we're going to learn about the different legs. So we're going to learn about the takeoff. We're going to be learning about the different legs as you turn around, the downwind leg, the base leg, the final leg, stuff like that. So we've got to learn about a lot of things in the next lesson. But the important part is all the basics, where you're going right now, and where we're headed. So that's really important. Let's get some flaps out here. So I'm actually trimming this aircraft for a descent now, which is it's a lot harder to trim an aircraft for a descent than it is to trim an aircraft for a climb. But I'll talk about that in the next episode. Do support me on Patreon. Link to that is in the description box below. I would massively appreciate your support. It would really mean a lot to me. And of course, you will get access, if you choose the $5 reward, you will get access to my Discord channel or my Discord server, where there's a bunch of stuff that goes on for patrons. But with the $5 reward, you will definitely be getting access to the Flight Sim Tutorials channel on there, which is a hidden channel. And on that channel, you guys can ask me all sorts of questions. I'll be more than happy to explain aircraft aerodynamics and turning physics and all that to you in a lot more detail. Of course, it's a lot to think about, it's a lot to work on, and all the help that you guys need. If you need any help, then feel free to support me on Patreon, and then you'll get a Discord invite and just jump on there, and I'm more than happy to help you guys out on Discord, because it's a lot easier for me, and of course it is helping me out in the sense that these videos take a lot of effort to make. You see a half an hour to 40-minute video. It could have taken 2-3 hours to just make, and it could have taken, and then it takes another few hours to edit and render, make sure everything's correct and stuff like that. So yeah, do check that out. Let's bring that landing gear out. There's supposed to be a town right here. There is supposed to be a town right here. And I hope you guys are still watching for this landing, because odds are this is the best landing you're going to see from me for a while. But you can see I'm not, for this, again, I've used the trim to minimize the effort that I am putting on this yoke. I am putting minimal effort on the yoke. So this is something you guys should get very, very used to. Make sure you practice putting minimal effort on the yoke. That's very, very important. Coming in over the M1. This is probably the best landing I've ever done. Oh, what do you know? That was going to happen. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode of the ground up advanced flight sim tutorials, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure you practice your turns. I'll see you guys in the next episode.